Okay, so quick review of what we've done. Let me go and make this full screen. And log in for you. So we had a CSV file that had a bunch of information for importing a user into Active Directory, into a new organizational unit under our Microsoft contoso.com domain, or lab domain anyway. So we wrote the script file, we imported those 100 users into a variable, run it through a for each loop, and each individual user is placed into $item as it loops through and then goes back and gets the next one and continues on. We pulled out the path for the organization unit, we pulled out the username, we did a test here. We're testing, does the organizational unit exist before we even do anything? Does the Active Directory structure exist? If not, we go all the way down here to the bottom and we write out an error saying Active Directory is not in a condition that we can do anything. So the organizational unit does not exist. And we write out an error to the screen. If it does exist, we get past this if point, and we come down here and we're looking at another if statement. So I'm going to get Active Directory user accounts, and I'm going to compare the SAM account in Active Directory with the SAM account that's in the CSV file. Do they match? If they match, then we don't need to do anything. If they match, we come out with a true statement. We just write a message to the screen, hey, the user's already there, let's quit. If the user is not found, if for some reason the user account in Active Directory doesn't match the user account in the CSV file, it doesn't exist, and we do our new user account. So this is a review from the last two classes that we've done. Now when we try to create a new user account, I've used this new ADUser commandlet before. I know all these are available, so they match the CSV file information. So we put all the switches and pull the individual information out, like the name, their address, their phone number, the email address. So when we created the account, that's all applied. But we come into some problems. One of them is the dash enabled is true. That right there can only take a Boolean value, and right now the way it reads the CSV file, it actually has $true and $false inside that file, but it only reads it as plain text. So when you try to pass that to dash enabled, it doesn't read it as a Boolean true and false. It reads as literal $true, $false, and it can't handle it. It says, this is a text string, I don't know what I'm looking for true or false. It's like, but it says true and false right in the text, and it can't convert it. So that's a problem we have not fixed yet. What's another problem? We did fix a problem for the password. The account password does not accept plain text. It requires it to be already encrypted. The CSV file, the password is in plain text, so it's not accepted here. So what we had to do, I pulled out the plain text password here on my line 15 that I've got highlighted. We put it in string _pass. So that's the password for whatever user account. And then I pass it to a new commandlet. Convert to secure string. I pass it the whatever password was in the text file. I specify what is being passed to it. I'm saying, hey, plain text is being sent to you, and don't ask me any questions, forcefully convert it. That's basically what dash force is. Otherwise, I think it asks a question, yes or no, or every example I've seen to do the conversion has dash force, so that's why I used it. So that converts the text string into a Microsoft security encrypted string and stores it in $pass. And now when I I'm down here on line 24 and I'm passing that to dash account password, it will accept it because it is a secure string. You could print that out on the screen and it just looks like a bunch of random ASCII characters, letters, numbers, symbols, and stuff. So it is an encrypted string. So we are at the point of, I said we wanted to see if we can get this enabled to work. Let me put a red dot there. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Put a red dot. Yeah, that's neat. I'm working on that. Highlighting. That's my problem right there. Disable. Let me look at the text file real quick. Or the CSV file. So each line is a user. And right over here on the right side I see there's $true, right? $true. I'm going to look and see if there's $false anywhere. So I'm going to go edit, find. I'm going to see if I can find the word false. I'm not going to make match case sensitivity. So I come down here and I see there is a $false in the mix. Several of them are $false. That means when those accounts are created, they should be created, but they should be disabled, meaning no user can log into them until administrator goes and enables the account. All the ones with $true should be enabled. So that's what that's all about. The only problem is if I was to do $item.enabled, which is that column heading, it doesn't read that as Boolean true and Boolean false. It's a special CPU code or whatever, the coding language. It reads it as literally just a $ and TRUE. It doesn't see that as, yeah, true and false. Boolean true and false is like a little code saying that you've got a binary bit that's either going to be 0 or 1. It's on and off. That's what true false actually is in the background, is 0 1, and it's not reading 0 1. It's reading 1 2 3 4 5 bytes of code, 5 full bytes of ASCII code. That's representing those characters, and we can't handle. It's not reading it as a single byte. It's reading as, or a single bit as 0 1. It's reading it as 5 bytes, which 5 bytes is 40 total bits. A byte is 8 bits. And there's 5 of them to represent the 5 characters. So yeah, that's what it's seeing it as. So a fix for that. One of my easiest fixes I found was to write a function. And give the function a name like test or whatever I want. And I'm trying to remember. So I'm going to search for PowerShell function example. All about functions. We'll look at this first link here. So you type in the function. It says, yeah, that makes sense. If you're creating a function, you should probably keep it the same verb-noun combination that Microsoft, because all the commandlets are actually functions, really. So if you're going to create one, they recommend you follow Microsoft's always create everything with a verb dash and a noun. So things are created within curly brackets. So let's go back to our code. So we should probably do test. Test is a verb, right? Can you consider that? So test dash, what are we going to test? We're testing test enabled. Sounds good. So we're going to, that's following Microsoft's naming convention. I could have just left it test. You don't have to, do the verb dash noun, but it's best if you try to follow things along. And it says inside, you can open up curly brackets, and it pops up the function's not referenced anywhere yet. We haven't even put the code inside the function. So what are we going to do in here? We're going to do an if. We're going to if, and inside parentheses, we're going to test if $, en is equal to, put single quotation marks and put $true. Then I'm going to hit space. I'm going to open up a curly bracket. And then I'm going to right arrow over, and then I'm going to type in else. And open up another curly bracket. So there are my two curly brackets. If it's true, it'll do something in the first bracket. If it's false, it'll do something in the second bracket. So if it's equal to true, I want to return $true. Notice it's in dark blue. If the value is not true, then what do I want to return? I want to return false. Okay, got something wrong right here in this variable name. We need to do it as item.enabled. If item.enabled is equal to true. So this function is created, and item.enabled is not visible until it's down here, but that's okay as long as I notice there's no references. As long as I call this function down under where item is finally created, it'll know what item.enabled is. So right now this here is just code that is just sitting there waiting to be used. It's not going to actually do anything until that I tell it to use it somewhere. So we created a function, and a function returns normally a single value when you run it. It gives you a piece of information. And this function is going to do some tests, and the only thing that it's going to return, the only thing that you can read out of it, is a Boolean value true or a Boolean value false. So right here I'm going to test if that user account has $true, the text, because that's what it's comparing one text string to another text string. If the $true in the CSV file equals the text $true, then I want to return a Boolean code true or a Boolean code false. And that will fix our little dash enable problem down at the bottom. It's pretty advanced having to write a function to come up with that, but it's a good problem to run into and shows what we can do with functions. Functions have always confused me at coding. I don't like them, but I sort of halfway understand it. Most of the time I want a function to return like 50 or 60 different things. I'm like, no, we're one thing. I don't want you to do a whole bunch of stuff. So it doesn't really do all that. So down here I'm going to call that function. I'm going to, and this is something you normally don't have to do. I'm actually going to define a variable. And I'm going to define a variable that it can only accept a Boolean value. It cannot accept a text. It cannot accept an integer, which is a number like 1 through, or 0 through 9. I'm going to put hard brackets and type in Boolean. And I'm going to put, say, $A. So that means that variable $A will only be able to take in the opcode 0 or 1, basically a Boolean true or false, yes, no, 0, 1 value. And it's going to equal again, I'm going to force this function to only return a Boolean value. You can spell it out or abbreviate Boolean. And inside parentheses, I'm going to do test dash enabled. So these Booleans are kind of just extra. It shouldn't have to have them. It should automatically see that it's returning Boolean and $A. But I'm just being extra careful since I've had such trouble with that dash enabled, trying to read something that's text versus a Boolean value that I'm specifying that when I run the function up here, that it is definitely going to return. It's only going to return Boolean. So A is either going to have true or it's going to have false in it when it's run. And right here, I can now change this to $A for dash enabled. So this function is not ran until we've already run through and made sure that the user has a place to be created, that the user doesn't already exist, and if all those are met, only then does it come down and actually say, oh, I need to come up here and run this code and check. Is $ enabled for that user? What text is there? Is it true? Return true. If it's anything else, it returns false. Even if the HR person spelled true without a capital T, it would also return false. So if anything's odd, if it's not perfectly $true, it would make the account disabled. Now I can test it by deleting all of my users that we created. Delete. Notice all of them are enabled except for this GAN grid, which had a password issue. I'm going to delete all 100 users. I'm going to go Control F5. It's going to create the users. Except for GAN Grig, he has got the password problem. All the users are created, but look, Fabe is disabled. These two people are disabled. They got the down arrows on them. That person's disabled. So our function did work correctly. Each user, it calls that function and says, hey, we need to run that code. It's an if statement. It goes and tests and returns a true or false value. And we were able to store that. We were able to capture that value and then pass it to our dash enabled switch. If you want to have that in as an example to look at. So this was just a real like throw you right into, hey, here's a function, not even explaining why. So that might be something to look up YouTube and research functions and stuff. That was returning a value after you do a bunch of stuff. You know, you do a whole bunch of code inside the function, and then at the end you're going to return something normally out of it. That's it's done in Java and in C, and all your coding languages normally have something called a function, and some things have called methods and classes, and I still don't have a total grasp of all of that. PowerShell's got its scripting, the functions in it are a little bit simpler, so if you can go through and learn, and if you have to learn other coding languages, knowing this should help you out some, but I'm not going to give you bad marks if you can't understand what a function is by the end of the class, because it took me several years playing with different languages and stuff. And I'll say for now, I'm not a developer. I can Google a lot, and I have a lot better understanding than I did 30 years ago on things. And I can do some scripting. And actual coding looks very similar to this in a lot of languages, but
I was looking at my midterm stuff for Java. It's more on the screen. I'm just finishing some stuff up.
so we have a Java code. So yeah, we're remote review. What's your Java code look like?
What does it look like?
You said you're going to pull it up on your screen?
It's on my screen. I was looking at it. I was making a few changes.
I'm looking at the wrong screen.
I've got it in Notepad because Eclipse isn't the
There's your screen. Your computer 9, 10?
10.
10. Okay, I was looking at the wrong screen. There's your screen. Okay, yeah.
Like 80 lines. It's my midterm.
So he's creating a sort of a function, kind of main section. You're doing a switch case. That's cool.
It's actually a switch case inside of the URL.
Yep. Is this for a menu? Is this like building a menu?
It's like a vacation thing that he's having to do.
Choose a number. Yep. Ifs are real great if you're comparing one value with another value. If you have to do like a menu or doing anything where that you've got to read input from a user and they could input 5, 6, 20 different things, if statements would become really too complex and too many brackets, and you get lost in testing everything out to get to the right spot. So we'll study this a little bit later. The case is a switch case, allows you to have input, and then instead of if between two different things, you can say, hey, scan all of this stuff, and then there's a default at the bottom. If you don't match, then do the default.
Switch case is basically a bunch of ifs with one
Look,
else.
we've got a for.
Yeah, for loop.
We got a for loop in here.
You got to use it to create a list.
Yep. For loop's a little bit more complicated than PowerShells, but I think you actually had to your loop. You actually had to specify a stopping point.
Right. We don't. There was
You had to initialize a variable with a certain value, then you had to have your condition and have a stopping point, and then increment that variable, and then loop through.
You had to input information for the father, the wife, the son, and the daughter, and that's
Yeah.
it, just the 4 people. so we had to stop it at the 40.
Yeah, so that loop there is, those are easy to get an endless loop if you don't increment and count it right. I like PowerShells where you don't have to do it. The PowerShell for each loop is so cool because it auto determines how many times it needs to run. This is easier than Java. A whole lot easier than Java. There's a lot of similarities. It's a whole lot easier than Java. And you had to initialize all of your variables with what type of data they can contain in Java. You couldn't just say, hey, here's a new variable. It's like, well, what
Right, yeah,
am I going to be an integer? Am I going to be a float, a double float, a string? What am I going to be? An array? Yeah. PowerShell is so cool if you've had to code another language. You're like, yes, this isn't coding, this is easy stuff.
Yeah, I know Java, Python, I'm learning Linux, and I want to get into depth in PowerShell eventually.
Yep. Yeah, so if you're being a Windows Server administrator, even a cloud Azure administrator, the PowerShell, there's remote PowerShell for Azure network and stuff to manage everything. It's so integrated now. And all of the servers, we got that core server, the command line only one. So if you got to manage lots of those, even VMware has PowerShell modules that you can download and install into PowerShell. So you have a bunch of commandlets that VMware wrote to manage virtualization. Y'all aren't in VMware class yet, but the people that take VMware, they would understand what I was talking about.
I want to be able to know at least 5 different languages.
So we're coming up on lunchtime, but this right here is pretty cool. We got everything. GAN-Grig is still an issue. I don't know that this semester I'll get into catching that error and writing out log files and stuff. We've got a lot of time left in the semester. And notice that we will be getting done with Module 7 well before the end of the semester. That gives us more time to do PowerShell. Later on, there's at least 3 PowerShell questions that are asked of you, and you got to read and go Google and figure out, what the PowerShell code is and submit that. I give you lots of hints and stuff, so hopefully me showing you a bunch of stuff. Like this got real advanced real quick. Probably way too advanced too quick, but we'll do some more scripting and stuff. I'm going to save that. If you want GAN-Grig to be created correctly, you would have to go actually edit the CSV file. Go edit, find GAN. Maybe I should look up Grig. There's Randolph. There's GAN-Grig. So GAN-Grig right here. The password, that's the password. So his password is GAN, and his first name is GAN. So I'm thinking I think his middle initial is actually N. So it reads like the first 2 letters, and then it goes to his middle initial, and then it does, I don't know, last. However we created it, the first 3 letters match his first name. It says, no, you can't use any part of your name. And GAN and GAN match. It's like, that's a 100% match. Can't use that as a password. So we had to maybe just make an @ symbol or pass on 2 through 4 or something. But it's good that he got an error so that you can change it, and then you have to talk with him individually. You can't say, here's how we created passwords, when you log in, type this in the first time, then create your own password after that. No, his is, we had to do our own special, so you have to go say, hey dude, I'll walk you through creating your password. So I'm going to save that file, and I'm going to test. I'm going to delete delete his account. Yep, get rid of him. If I run this, it'll tell me all the other users already exist. And I didn't see any red anywhere this time. It didn't pop a red on the screen. If I go in here and refresh, Gangrig is created and he's not disabled. It accepted his password this time because it didn't match his, no part of it matched his name, so it created it properly. Well, yes, errors are good sometimes. Like in that case, we needed to know that the feed file had something messed up in it. We can't create his user account with that password. So that was good to have that error. What's even better is when we go in here and do code to catch errors and dump it out to a log file. That's something you might want to, if you wanted to expand upon it and you're like in Java class back there and you're like, hey, I want to do a try catch scenario and catch an exception and write the exception error message out to a log file. That would be cool to expand your knowledge on this. The rest of y'all are like, I don't even know what clear host means, so you probably don't want to dive off into that scenario.